You're listening to Ready That Go podcast, where we talk about the mysteries of parenting. My name is Lenart.
And my name is Demian. Among other things, we explore books on parenting and discuss the chapters on this podcast.
Join us on our journey as we attempt to incorporate our new knowledge into everyday fatherhood.
Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ready Dad Go with Leonard and Demian. This is our 9th episode, which is quite exciting, and we've been reading a book by a gentleman called Daniel Siegel. It's called Parenting from the Inside Out, and this chapter so far has been quite a good one. It's called How We Disconnect and Reconnect, Rupture and Repair. It's a nice chapter to talk about. We're going to try and keep it more personal and what our experiences have been. We're going to talk, Leonard's going to take us through the chapter a little bit. I'm going to recap on the last week. It's been interesting for me. Our family's been in isolation because one of the children at Jack's school tested positive. So we've been at home for the last 10 days. Jack's back at school for the first day today, so freedom. And you know what? It's been easier than I thought. Jack has been such a superstar. I think one thing I wanted to say is full disclaimer. I know it's been a lot harder for a lot of other people all over the world. People have had to isolate and been at home for a lot longer, months at a time in the UK, for example, in apartments and flats. And I fully appreciate that. We've been very, very fortunate. And yeah, I'm staying in an apartment at the moment. And we've got a lot of space. So we can escape when needed. And also, I was very lucky to have my wife Carla at home as well. So she had to work. Her work didn't stop. But she gave me time in between, which was an absolute lifesaver. But all things considered, Jackson was great. We kept it positive and optimistic and set up so many games in the house. We built huge hidey houses and police stations and cardboard cars. I'm just looking around the lounge now at all the things we got up to. And we did a lot of painting and Play-Doh. And honestly, there wasn't one hectic tantrum the full 10 days. So yeah, it was overall a great experience, and I honestly feel closer to him. And it wasn't difficult to send him to school today, but I was like, okay, it's actually time. He can go back to school. Awesome. But it was all good. It was all positive. There was there wasn't any negative about it. So yeah, that was our last 10 days. How about you, Leonard?
I'm doing good. All right. I'm surprised by how in keeping this podcast running and talking on a weekly basis about parenting, it actually makes you more mindful and more in tune with your own actions and your relationship with your child, right? So yeah, it's become like this normal thing for me to ask myself every time I'm dealing with her, is this how I want to do it? Do I want to do it somehow differently? So this constant wish to improve. And of course, it's always challenging, but it's also fun because you can see how you can actually influence on your child or on the relationship and how you can make so many interactions and daily things much kinder, nicer, more fun, more relaxed. If you're just a bit aware that you don't always have to say no, you don't always have to be strict, you don't always have to react. So if you just are mindful of doing a connection, things get much easier. So for me,
it can flow a bit more.
Yeah, better flow. Yeah, exactly. So Noel and me are having a good time. I think we spend a lot of time climbing and going about and around, so it's fun. she's testing borders all the time, more and more. So it's challenging as well. So it's a good chapter to talk about because it talks about setting boundaries and limit settings and stuff. So it's good. And I've been also, because last time we talked about the low road and the high road, I've tried to be mindful what kind of things trigger me. And last time we talked about, there was a story about a father who felt abandoned or rejected by his daughter, right? About 3. And that was really interesting for me because I never had words to put how I feel, but that's exactly how I feel when Noelle doesn't cooperate or she doesn't want to work with me. That's how I feel. I feel rejected. And then this is like a trigger that creates these implicit memories in my body of anger and tightness and sadness and all that stuff. So it's been try to be mindful of these triggers and not to enter the low road, but to remain calm and reflective of what's happening in my body and with me. So that was my focus for the past week. And it's interesting to be mindful of these things because you do get a better sense of what's happening when. So it was fun. And Noelle,
I agree. I think what I've noticed as well is at the beginning, it felt a lot like work in essence, to be conscious the whole time and mindful the whole time. But over time, it's not, I can't say it's become second nature. I still have to work on it. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't feel as taxing as it was when I consciously decided, or when we consciously decided to take on this journey.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm not mindful. I still fail a bunch of times. It's just, it is somewhere in the back of my mind that it's present. Well, it wasn't before, right? So when I still do stupid stuff and say stupid sentences, I'm just like, oh God, what am I talking about? Like, what is this, right? So it's been okay. So if we go to this chapter, so I like how it talks at the beginning of the chapter that people are not meant to live in isolations, that we are dependent on others for our emotional well-being, right? So that was like, I always liked that idea. People are not meant to be alone. And with children, a lot of time there is a lot of tensions and disconnect and all sorts of stuff. And me especially, as we talked before the podcast, I have a lot of problems with feeling guilty and shame and all that stuff. And this chapter talks really nicely that you as a parent, you can spend too much time worrying about your own guilt and your own shame, so you forget to go back into the relationship and repair the rupture, as it calls it. So this chapter is about ruptures and how to repair these ruptures. So it's important that you have like this double focus, right? You're focused on yourself, but you're also focused on your child and what he's experiencing, and then to not spend too much time beating yourself like I like to do it all the time, but just giving yourself a break and just accepting that we all have these challenges and we all do errors, and it's everyday life. So, and
it's totally natural. What they call one of the types of ruptures, that this oscillating disconnection. So it's absolutely natural for us to feel connected with our child and our child to feel connected with us on a daily basis, and it rotates. You drift apart and you come back together, and you drift apart and you come back together.
Not just natural to feel connected, it's also natural to have a wish to be alone, both of us, the child and yourself, right? So it's connection and the need to be alone, your alone time. So we all have that, so it's nothing wrong. So it's like everyday balance, right? Connect and disconnect, connect and disconnect. And like you said, that's what in the chapter is called this oscillating disconnection. And as I understood it, these disconnections that happen during everyday experiences, in a way, like you don't quite get the messages of your child, and that it's harder to get when you have younger children because they are not as fluent to talk about their needs. When you don't understand them and you don't respond to their needs, he calls that a benign rupture. And benign ruptures are, I think, most common maybe there is another one more common, the next one, but these are like everyday ruptures that happen.
Depends on your parenting
style. Exactly. Yeah. But they're like these inevitable ruptures that happen because you can't always be 100% in tune with your child. So, but the important thing is that when there is emotional distress, or not just distress, or there is an emotional excitement, if this is the moment you don't connect with your child, these benign ruptures can be more painful for the child. And it's more important that you repair these disconnections, right?
And those disconnections often happen when you are most busy or distracted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like maybe
preoccupied.
At that point when I've started to make dinner is the point where Jackson all of a sudden needs my attention more than throughout the day.
Yeah.
So here I am like, Jack, I need to make dinner, and he wants to, all of a sudden he becomes very affectionate and he wants to show me something. And those are the points where we can easily disconnect, and it can rupture into something that can become quite easily out of control, or can easily be repaired, which I'm sure you're going to talk about more, by just listening and trying to be in tune, but also sticking to your boundaries and not getting completely distracted with making dinner and going to go play with the Lego car in the lounge.
Yeah, exactly. One more thing I forgot. When talking about your needs to be alone, and it's important that you express these needs, right? So when you have a need to be alone, it's important to express them to your child and to explain that these are your needs and your wants, and it's about meeting your needs. It's not about rejecting her, or it's not the consequence of her behavior, so the child doesn't feel rejected. So it's important that we learn that we are expressing our needs. So also for role modeling, so she'll be able to express her needs, right? And also to give her knowing that it's not her fault or that she's responsible.
So give me an example. So if you are with Noelle and you really need a little bit of time out, if it's just 5-10 minutes to regroup or whatever, how would you explain that to her?
I would just tell her, well, I'm really, really, really tired right now, so I would just lie here for 10 minutes to get my energies back, and then I will read your book, I promise. Right? It's just like, and she, many times you just go, okay, and you can go play by yourself for these 10 minutes. And she goes, okay, and she goes,
yeah, Sam, we try to do it on a daily basis. Sometimes it takes more energy to insist on time out than it is to just, okay, I'll have my time out tonight when he's asleep. But what I've tried to do is said, okay, Jackson, I need a nap now. I'm just going to take 15 minutes. I'm a little bit tired, and then I promise you, very similar. I'll play with you afterwards, and I will do what we said. And sometimes, I mean, it can take up to an hour to get it right. But then finally he realizes that, okay, and then he's all of a sudden really quiet, and he goes to play by himself, and he plays so beautifully, and he'll come back and he said, Daddy, are you finished resting now? And I'm like, yes, I'm rested. Thank you so much for giving me some time, Jackson. It's exactly what I needed. Now I can play with you again. Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's important. Yeah, it doesn't work every day because
no, of course not.
It's exhausting.
But just by giving yourself permission to express your needs, you're giving your child permission to have his own needs, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, the next sort of ruptures, my favorite rupture of the past 10 days is the limit setting ruptures, right? The ruptures that happen when you set limits to your child. And this is like, at the moment for me, everyday struggle in how to do it in a normal and gentle and compassionate way. And I really like how you described it in this chapter, is that but you don't need to fix or you don't need to repair how your child is feeling, right? You can let your child feel all the emotions she's feeling or he's feeling when you set a limit. But it's important that you let him know that you understand how he's feeling, right? So go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, what do you think they mean by limit setting? It's like,
Limit setting. For example, your child wants a candy before dinner.
right.
And you say, no, it's not time for candy, it's going to be dinner. Yeah. And then there's all hell breaks loose, right? And I think
so you're kind of setting your boundaries.
Boundaries, yeah. Just pretty much boundaries, right? There's thousands of examples, right? She wants to lay on the floor for half an hour before preschool, right? And it's just, there's not enough time to lay on the floor for half an hour. And you have to set a limit. But now you have to stand up and stuff like that. So there are thousands of ways. Or she wants to run around parking lot where there are cars driving, like and stuff like that. So I like how it explains that you can actually, by reflecting them back their desire, for example, she wants to have an ice cream before dinner, by reflecting their desire without fulfilling it, kind of it's a different experience for them than just hearing no. So it's like you say, okay, I know you really, really want this ice cream, and I'm sure when you grow up, you'll have a ton of ice cream before dinner, right? But right now we're going to have dinner because it's time for dinner, not for ice cream, right? And it's supposed to be a much different experience for the child because she feels understood, and also gave her this fantasy of the future. She's going to have ice cream when she grows up. So it's a different experience just saying, no, it's not time for ice cream, it's dinner now, right?
Yeah.
And then the other part is just to let them know you understand how you feel. So they are heard in their hurt, right? Because they are hurt when you set boundaries. Of course they are. So you don't have to fix. You can have them these emotions, but just be with them in this state. Which is hard to do sometimes, because many times you would just rather give in, let them have it, not to deal with the emotions, right? But it's important.
I think it can feel almost manipulative by your child. They're reacting to get their way, which is true. And I think one mustn't forget that even if it is a sense they are trying to get their own way, it doesn't mean that they aren't feeling bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because it is maybe a manipulative type of situation, they're still having those emotions. You can see it's all over their faces. So you mustn't reject what they're feeling, and you must understand that they do really feel those things.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And also what I see for myself as a better way with Noelle is it works much better if I do a connection, right? If I don't just yell across the room, no, stop doing it, or no, don't do that, oh, no, it's not time for that. And you have go to her, go on her level, look her in the eyes and just tell her like, no, Noelle, we can't do this right now, right? It's much different effect than just saying something from afar, right? So, so yeah, that's about limit setting. Ruptures.
He also mentions in the book, I mean, there are occasions, and it's very important to be said, that the child needs to hear that no is no. And every single time you say no, you don't have to give a reason. I mean, I do find myself, I do have a lot of time on my hands, so I can almost, like, children at this age ask why about everything as well. And Jack still asks why this, why that. And we can talk about something absolutely, one thinks it's nothing, but we can talk about it for half an hour because he asks why. I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation where I can do that. But it's the same as saying no, and no is no, and you don't have to give a reason every time. But it's important, and maybe you can dive into that a little bit, to realize or to feel when it's a time that no is no, and when no needs a reason why it's no.
I don't think it ever needs a reason, but it helps if you talk with your child more to help him understand. But not in a way explaining yourself, just reflecting on their needs more than explaining why there is a boundary, right?
Right.
So yeah, I agree with that, yeah. And last time we talked about entering the low road where all contingent communication is impossible and part of our brain shuts off. And the ruptures that happen while we're in the low road are called toxic ruptures. And they are usually a consequence of screaming, name calling, even threatening behavior toward a child. And these ruptures are much more deep and distressing for a child. And they're often, or if not always, accompanied by this intense feeling of shame. And shame is the thing he talks about a lot in the chapter, right? And how if you don't repair the ruptures, and these are like prolonged periods of state, this can be really damaging or influence the child's development and just his self-awareness, right? So then later on in life, you can have this shame dynamic, as he calls it, when you develop this defense mechanism to prevent yourself from feeling shame, right? But shame is something not just the child feels, but both the child and the parent feels when the toxic rupture happens. And then here is the important thing, is to repair this rupture as soon as possible. And it's also important to calm yourself as much as possible, completely calm yourself before going back into the relationship and repair the rupture, right?
Yeah.
And it's also important, very important, to acknowledge our own responsibility in these situations, right? To apologize, to give words to what you did wrong. It, like we said, storytelling is really helpful here, right? To just explain 100%. The situation, what happened, right? And so he talks a lot about experience of shame. And for me, that's like a known feeling. I have a lot of problems with shame, and it's like my everyday feeling when I fail as a parent in situations. But it's important to maybe even talk about it, right?
Yeah. And we are, as the parents, are the ones that can understand our feelings much better than our children. So that's why, I mean, we are the parents, and it's our responsibility to teach our children how to deal with these feelings.
Yeah.
And the best way is to talk about them and to explain them to the child, because then the child realizes, actually, okay, you understand what I experienced. And that is the most fulfilling thing for that child, is, okay, he actually gets it.
And not just he gets it,
he knows what I'm feeling.
And he apologized, right?
Yeah.
That's
he apologized. Okay, wow. Okay, that was very intense for me. It was totally overwhelming, but he understands why.
Yeah. And he also talks about this need to have this, like I said before, dual awareness of yourself and your emotions, of your child and his emotions, right? And that's the important aspect of doing a repair, is to explain both sides, not just yourself and your child's side, right? Also give words to what he did and what happened, the consequences of his actions, not just yours, right?
Totally. Absolutely. And that I like that bit about that test that one could do with the word yes and the word no, and the feeling one experiences by using those words. He goes into the science and the parts of the brain that are triggered just by hearing the word yes and no. And you can create an environment where you can ask a couple of friends to sit in a room, and you can say yes, yes, yes a couple of times, and ask them afterwards to really feel in their body how they felt. Did they feel excited? Did they feel nervous? Did they feel sad? Did they feel rejected? And then you do the same thing with the word no, and you say no, 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 no a couple of times with a little bit of emphasis. And how did you feel? And listen to your feelings and emotions. And it's amazing what triggers. And he also talks about what he almost calls a trapdoor, and letting too many. You have to find the balance that you don't have too much negativity coming through or too much positivity, and being able to flow between those emotions.
Yeah.
Because maybe you can explain it a bit better, but like in the story that Daniel tells about his experience with his son going to the
software store.
To the software store, yeah. But what happens in the story, it's a bit of a long story, but he loses control. His son loses control, and they go into an absolute
meltdown.
meltdown. Yeah.
With
and
yelling and cursing, right? With yelling and cursing.
Cursing, yelling in the shop. I mean, this is with a 12-year-old child. And they're both on the low road in a big way. And it takes all afternoon for him to cool down. And he's finally able to go and sit with his son and apologize for the way he reacted and talk through it. He was still able, because he had, in his emotions, he had set some boundaries which were totally, they weren't very reasonable. He was going to confiscate his son's TV game for the next 10 months and stuff like that. But he didn't, afterwards he obviously felt ashamed and a bit guilty. He didn't totally remove those boundaries, but he made ones that were more approachable, more realistic.
1 week.
Sorry?
1 week.
1 week, yeah.
Instead of 10 months, that's much more approachable, yeah.
Measurable.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Leonard, do you want to go into the bit of the science behind that, or should we give that one a miss? Just that yes, no, and
maybe we should give that a miss, because then there is a whole chapter about accelerator and brakes, right? And I'm not sure I completely understood that part of the chapter.
Okay, yeah. I enjoyed the chapter, and I enjoyed that part too, but trying to verbalize it, I think I'm struggling a bit with.
Because it's a hard thing to verbalize, because he goes into science and brain and neocortex and prefrontal and all sorts. So it's a bit much to explain and to understand as well. So I think I'll have to reread this part of the chapter. But I just think that what's important is that rupture happens on daily basis. That it's important that we repair them as soon as possible, calmly.
Yeah.
And to have this dual awareness of your own experience and give words about your own experience and your child's experience. And that it helps to connect, to just get on their level. In our case, we have small children, so just to get on their level and just be with them, right? So I think that's the important message from this chapter.
Another message that I got from the chapter, it's pretty obvious, I suppose, but it made me think a little bit. And it's also with adult relationships, is everyone needs different amount of time to recover. So meaning, like, if there is an incident or one wants to now go into a repair process, maybe for me, it's 5 minutes later, okay, I'm over it, I feel okay, calm and collected, and now I want to talk about it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that my son is ready.
Yeah.
My partner is ready. They might need a lot longer.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And one must remember and realize that.
I'm struggling with that as well, yeah. I usually get really fast into the calm, and people around me maybe not as fast. Me too. So.
I'm like, okay, I want to deal with this now. But one must remember, when everyone is different, absolutely. And the same argument can impact two people completely differently, which is also very, very important to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Leonard.
Thank you, Demian.
It's a bit of a long one today,
but
it was good.
Thank you to all the listeners. We get bits and pieces of feedback here and there, so we really appreciate it. And we have a surprise for next time. It's our 10th episode, so it's going to be a bit different this time, but we're looking forward to it. Absolutely. So come on and listen. Come on and listen and read the book. It's fun. And press that subscribe button. Subscribe. We've got a lot of views. Well, we think they're relatively good, but we want more subscriptions. Please, guys, come and join us. Yeah, exactly. All right. Take care, brother. Take care. You too, my friend. Bye-bye. Ciao.